Happy day, children. In English grade 3, we are going to see the Unit 6, a very interesting story, The Elves and the Shoemaker. This story is written by Brothers Grimm. Jacob and William Grimm collected fairy tales from and around Europe. They are one of the best known storytellers of folk tales. They found and retold stories like Cinderella, The Frog Prince, Hazel and Gretel, and Sleeping Beauty. So in Elves and the Shoemaker, the characters are the elves, the shoemaker, and the shoemaker's wife. So this is a popular fairy tale about a poor shoemaker and his wife. So one morning what happened is they found that someone had made a pair of shoes from some leathers left the previous night. They sold this pair and decided to leave some more leather out night. To their surprise, they saw a pair of shoes were made again. The shoemaker and his wife decided to hide and see who was making the shoes. They were indeed surprised by what they saw. They were so thankful to their helpers that they decided to do something for them in return. And they made a very beautiful green coat and they left it in the table. So the rest of the story describes what the couple did for their friends and how they benefited from their help. So let us read out more. So this story is about a poor shoemaker whose life changes when the magic happens. So let's read to find out more. Once upon a time, there lived a poor shoemaker. Though he was honest and hardworking, he never made enough money. He and his wife ran the household with great difficulty. Sometimes all they had to eat was a piece of bread. The shoemaker saved some money and finally had enough to buy a piece of leather. He could make only one pair of shoes with it. He decided to make the shoes next day. So he prepared the leather that night and left it ready on the table of his workroom. He slept happily that night, thinking of the pair of shoes he could make the next day. In the morning, after he had slice of toast for the breakfast, he entered his workroom. On his work table stood a beautiful pair of fancy shoes. The shoemaker was completely taken aback. He rushed to call his wife. When he told her what he had seen, she could not believe him. So that the shoemaker brought his wife to the room. So she was amazed to see the shoes. The shoemaker took the shoes in his hand, admiring the neat and tidy stitches. He had tears in his eyes. He thanked God for this miracle and set the pair on the window shelf. A rich merchant was passing by the shoemaker's window. When he spotted the attractive pair of shoes, he went inside and bought them, paying a handsome price. After such a long time, the shoemaker and his wife had a proper meal that day. That evening, the shoemaker bought enough leather to make 2 pairs of shoes. He cut and shaped the shoes with great love and care. By the end of the evening, he was tired. He laid everything out and left the room. He thought that he could come back the next morning to complete the work. Next morning, the shoemaker woke up early. He bathed and prayed, ate his humble breakfast, and then stepped into the room where he worked. Lo and behold, once again he found 2 stylish pairs of shoes waiting for him on his work table. With a prayer on his lips and tear in his eyes, the shoemaker once again thanked God for his fortune. That day, 2 more rich clients bought the shoes at a very good price. Again, the shoemaker bought more leather and left it in the room. The next day, he found 4 pair of attractive new shoes on his work table. This went on for some time. Soon the shoemaker became quite rich. He could buy lot of leathers and make many pair of shoes at once. Before Christmas, the shoemaker's wife suggested they find out who was helping them when the shoes that night. So the couple hid behind the curtain of the workroom and stood in absolute silence. Right after midnight, the window opened and two small elves entered the room. They were dressed in dirty and torn clothes. They sang and hummed to themselves and worked on the piece of leather that were sitting on the table. The shoemaker and his wife were so grateful that they nearly came out of their hiding place and thanked them, but they did not move so as not to scare the eels. The next day, the shoemaker and his wife cut bits of cloth and made little cloths for the eels. That night, they put the new clothes on the work table and left the room. After a while, the eels came, as usual, looking for the piece of leather that the shoemaker could have left behind. But instead, they found two new sets of clothes for themselves. The eels were extremely happy. They took the clothes and jumped through the window, singing and dancing merrily. The shoemaker and his wife thanked them silently. The shoemaker now had enough money and he could employ a few men to work for him. He was never poor again. Though the eels never came back, the shoemaker and his wife knew they were somewhere helping other poor people. So, this story is adapted from the original story by Brothers Green. I hope you all liked the Elves and the Shoemaker story, and I will see you in the next different topic. Thank you, children. Have a great day.